guys, welcome back to another episode of the Mysterious Huntsman podcast. And I just wanted to thank everyone for tuning in and all the YouTube subscribers. There are plenty, and I really appreciate all you guys. And if you would just keep tuning in, share it with your friends, and if you like it, subscribe to it. And you know, with that said, I know everybody is not going to agree with what we talk about on this show. You know, nobody, if the world were all just one frame of mind, it'd be pretty boring. So, I take all the comments, good and bad, and because that's what this whole show is about, just kind of networking and hearing everyone's story and learning about this phenomenon. And speaking of that, I've got a great show for us tonight, and I'm really excited to have new good friend Matt Delph on the show. And Matt is with MECRO, the Mountain Empire Cryptid Research Organization, and you can find him on Facebook. And we will definitely get more information from Matt. And he seems to be a wealth of knowledge and information in that field, and he's really good friends with Angelia Shear here in Nashville, who's the Mutual UFO Network State Director of Tennessee. There, I'll get it out eventually. And she also runs Shear Research, and those guys are great. So if you ever need anything, just contact them directly or contact me. I can put you in touch. But let's get to Matt and see what he's got going on. Hey, Matt, this is Paul with the Mysterious Huntsman podcast. How are you doing, man?
I'm doing good, thank you.
Man, thank you so much for taking time out and coming on my little feeble podcast. I know we have a very good mutual friend in Nashville, Angelia Shear with Shear Research, and she got us connected, and I'm so thankful, for her doing that, because she said you are a wealth of knowledge and information and have a really big background in the cryptid research.
Yeah, I've been researching since 1996, the fall of 1996. So that's 24 years almost 24 years. So
yeah, that's a good track record, man. And speaking of that, what got you started into that? I'll just let you take it and just tell me how you got started. And I know you're involved with MECRO, the Mountain Empire Cryptid Research Organization. Did I say that right?
Yeah, yep. MECRO is what they call it.
Nice.
Mountain Empire Cryptid Research Organization.
All right, cool. Well, yeah, man, I'm just going to shut up and let you take it away.
All righty. You probably can't tell by my accent, but I was actually born and raised about an hour south of Chicago in Indiana.
Okay.
And where we grew up, it was in an area, it was outside of Lafayette, Indiana, and it was near the Wabash River and Tippecanoe River, and they called it River Junction, where the two rivers would meet. And I was born and raised there. We lived on a dead-end gravel road. At the very end of the gravel road is where our house was. We were surrounded by hundreds of acres of nothing but forest, and Sugar Creek ran behind our house into the Wabash River right behind our house. And I grew up just, out there in the woods my whole entire life. I used to help my dad. He trapped there for a while and taught me how to hunt and so forth. And never believed in Bigfoot or any of that stuff. If it was real, it was stuff that was out in the Himalayan mountains or something like that. So what kind of got me started was I had my own encounter, and I'll lead up to that, but I wish I would have known now, back then, stuff about it. But your mind, if you're brought up thinking that kind of stuff is just folklore or, just a bunch of nonsense, and whenever you're out in the woods, you don't look for it. Our mind is set, like, for example, I would be deer hunting. I'm only looking for deer signs.
Right.
And so your mind, if your mind is set on Bigfoot, stuff like that's not real, that's just, like ghost stories, stuff like that, then, you don't ever think about, never even thought about Bigfoot or anything like that. But I'd say it was probably in the late 80s, going into the early 90s, our family, where I'm old enough to remember at the time, I was in high school. I was out in the woods more, and I was hunting alone then. And I was always after this one elusive buck. I've got deer sheds, or 21 points on these things, and I was after that buck. And the setting, the layout of the land up there is behind my house, there was a creek. Then across that creek, hundreds of acres of wood. A doctor owned it. We owned land right in the middle of it. And the doctor wouldn't let nobody else in there hunt, anything like that. So the woods was basically all mine, that whole area back to there. And there's an old apple orchard on there, but it was really thick, super thick. You had raspberry bushes, the old apple orchard, some old building structures, old barns, stuff like that in there. Mm-hmm. But it was so grown up and thick. And at the top of that plateau, there was, after you cross the creek, you can go up on top of this plateau, there was cedar trees, and you'd go through a bunch of, I called them briars at the time, but they were raspberry bushes. But I didn't, like I said, never thought about Bigfoot or anything, but I was probably about freshman in high school and sophomore, stuff like that, whenever we would start, me and my siblings and stuff, we'd start hearing screams in the woods because we were always out there playing and stuff like that. We didn't know what it was. We didn't think anything about a Bigfoot. We didn't know what was making that sound. It was different, but we just assumed some wild animal out there, And we'd find grass beds, huge grass beds that were smashed down, and they had a nasty odor. And we just assumed, like I said, we were kids, that it was deer or something that was bedded down in there. And so we would play, and as the years went on, we got used to hearing the screams. And anytime there was usually that thing was around, you could smell a nasty odor. And we just assumed some wild animal, didn't know Bigfoot, nothing like that ever crossed our mind. And it was one evening, I can remember it, the dogs were barking, and we used to have, we didn't have air conditioning in the house. We used to have the old box fans, how you'd raise the window up and put one in the window.
Oh, yeah.
And we heard this scream coming through the window. And it was probably about, I don't know, it was dark. It was pretty late, too. I'd say anywhere in between 11 to midnight. And you could hear that scream coming through. We didn't know what it was. And the dogs were barking, but it was just a high-pitched scream. And then later on, we would hear, when we were out playing in the woods, stuff like that, we'd hear it scream, but it never, ever showed itself. And these woods are so thick, you got to be right up on something before you see it. But it never bothered us, so we, no sense in us being scared of it because it never really bothered us. And we got used to our surroundings, You'd hear it all the time, so never bothered us, so we didn't think nothing of it. And then there's one incident whenever my little sister, her, the neighbor kid, and my brother, they were out in the woods playing. And my parents always told us, you got to stay on our land, don't go out anywhere else, and so on. Well, I remember my little sister and brother getting in trouble because they were out on the highway miles away from our place. And, of course, my little sister's trying to tell my mom. She's like, no, there's a monster. It chases out of the woods, And at the time you think, yeah, they're in trouble. They're just making up stories, kids. And kind of explained that she thought it was deer. So her and the neighbor kid and my brother, they started tossing rocks into this area, trying to scare the deer out so they could see them where it's real thick. And I guess the thing screamed, and they seen a bunch of brush moving, and I'm not sure if they seen it or what, but they got them all running, and they thought that there were maybe more than one, or it was super quick and was cutting them off, and it basically just pushed them way off our land, and they got in trouble. And like I said, we never just assumed that since she's younger than me, she's a kid, her and the neighbor kid, and my brother, they were all younger than me. We just assumed that they got in trouble, so they were making up stories, so they, kind of saved their butt from my parents. But coming back later on to find out, there's something to that. And we always heard it scream, stuff like that. I'd find. I really got into deer hunting once I was a teenager and after high school. And my parents had moved away from their house up there in Indiana there. And I would still go back out there. I still lived up there in Indiana. And they moved down south to Virginia. I would still go out there to deer hunt. And it was 1996. I was 21. It was a weekend right before Thanksgiving. And I went out there. It was probably about 2 o'clock in the afternoon. 2:30, somewhere around there. And I had these deer pretty much figured out. It was the pattern that they ran. It was every 2 to 3 days, this herd of deer would come through, and they'd be right there where I'd hunt at, usually about every 2 or 3 days. They would come through that area. So that Saturday afternoon, I was out there, and I'd had a tree that I leaned up against because it's so thick you couldn't hunt out of a tree stand because they're cedar trees. It was really, really thick, and I'd sit right on this deer trail that ran across through the cedars down into this little swampy area with cattails and stuff, and into the creek, and then up to the other side. So it was pretty worn deer trail, and I've killed deer there before. And that afternoon, it changed my life. I was sitting there and back up against this tree, had all the leaves, everything moved out so it wouldn't make no noise. Sit there all afternoon. Didn't hear nothing, didn't see nothing, and the sun started setting. So I was like, okay, I'm going to have to call it a day, nothing going on. And I was sitting there, and I started getting up and started getting my stuff, and the sun was setting, and I got this smell that comes through the air. And it was a nasty smell. I guess you could describe it as like a rotten hay smell. If you've ever smelled rotten hay.
Yeah.
It's really distinct. You can smell it. It's strong. And so I was like, okay, that whatever that is, it's out here. Whatever that smell, because I've smelled it before out there, and I've heard the screams. Well, I was like, okay, whatever that animal is. Well, as I continued just getting my stuff, because I wasn't scared, never thought anything else, just some kind of wild animal. And all of a sudden I heard a couple of sticks break. And I'm like, well, maybe got something coming down this trail. And I could hear something moving, so I get my gun up, and I'm hoping it's a doe. And I'm like, all right, the deer, the bucks are in rut. I'm going to have a big buck following. So I'm getting my gun up. I'm trying to look. And like I said, the sun is setting. And I'm like, okay, hurry up, whatever it is, And then as it got closer, it got more aggressive. So I thought, okay, I'm hearing more and more stuff going on over here in this woods. It's got to be a buck trailing this doe because it's loud, aggressive. Normally they're not, loud or aggressive. And then all of a sudden I seen these trees start shaking. I'm like, what in the world? So I'm getting excited. I'm thinking it's 2 bucks. I'm like, it's got to be 2 bucks fighting over a doe. And they're coming, I'm like, all right, I'm going to have my pick of which buck I'm going to get here. And all of a sudden, I heard that scream. And the scream, I'd never heard it like this before. It was an aggressive scream. It was a high-pitched scream with a growl in it, an aggressive growl. But it was a low growl. And I've only heard one. Like I said, I've been researching now for almost 24 years, and I've only heard one other scream identical to it, and that was somebody had it recorded from North Carolina. And it wasn't nothing like you'd find on these Finding Bigfoot or anything like that. This was an aggressive scream with a deep growl, and I was like, what in the world? So I'm looking, and as it got closer, trees really started shaking. And I can distinctly remember it sounded like something was falling behind me. So I turned around and looked, I hear stuff, but I didn't see nothing. I don't know if it was throwing stuff over the trees, maybe walnuts or something, And I'm looking around, I'm like, okay, I don't see nothing back here, but it sounded like stuff was falling. And then as it got more closer, it got more aggressive. And at this point, I couldn't see nothing, but these trees, you could tell all of a sudden, you could hear them popping, snapping. It was snapping trees. And I'm like, what in the world is this, So I keep waiting, and then there's this little, it's probably about 30 yards or less away from me. There's a little gap in the trees, in the cedar trees there, and there's some little saplings in there. And that little 15-foot little gap is when I actually seen it. And it reminded, and it was quiet. That's what was weird, as when it moved in between those trees, I couldn't hear nothing. It didn't make any sound. And the way it was like a glide. If you've ever seen a trash bag, like a Walmart bag or something, blow across a parking lot, that's how it was smooth, just as can be, went right across there. And whenever I seen it, the way the sun was setting, I didn't get a good look at its face, but I could see the whole outline of it. I could see the sun had come through, and I could tell on its body there, you could see the hair on its arm, its shoulders, and it reminded me, first thing I thought of, it reminded me of like an orangutan somewhat. It was in between 6 to 7 foot tall. It had dark hair. I couldn't tell if it was black or dark brown, but it had long hair. It wasn't short. It was long hair, and it moved right through there. And I seen it, like I said, it's in between 6, 7 foot tall, and I seen it move through that little 15-foot gap. And then when it got to the other edge of these cedars, I could still see part of its side there sticking out, and I was confused. I was like, what in the, I was looking down towards, see something on all fours, but this thing was bipedal, and I was confused, but I was scared because this thing was aggressive. It was coming towards me, and it let out this scream, and I'm holding my gun up, and I'm looking, I'm like, what in the world is that? I'm trying to comprehend what I'm looking at, because I'm looking at something that's not supposed to exist.
Right.
And I'm scared at the same time, but I'm confused. And I'm like, what in the world? And as it got closer, and once it cleared that gap, and I seen, the whole outline of it, I couldn't see the face real good, though. But it had the long hair, like I said, looked similar to an orangutan. And I was like, just scared and confused. And once it got closer, it let out that scream with a growl. and this stick, I seen a shoulder move, and this stick, it was probably about 3 foot long, and it was probably about around as a end of a baseball bat, and it was end over end. Stick come flying past my head. I mean, it had some force. And that thing let out this scream, that growl, and it cut right through me. And I was like, forget this. I'm out of here. And so I turn around, and I take off running down the trail there. And I get to the point where I got to go down to cross, cut down to where I got to cross the creek. And so first thing I did was as I stopped to go down this hill to cut down across the creek, I stopped, turned around, and looked to see if the thing was following me. And it wasn't following me. I didn't see it, but as soon as I stopped and turned around, it was watching me. It could still see me. It let out this scream with that growl again. So I knew it could see me, so I took off out of there. And I was living up in Lafayette with a friend of mine, and I got in there, got my truck, and got out of there. And I went back, and I sat down. Then I went back to where I was living at the time there in Lafayette, and a friend of mine, he comes in there, and he's like, "What's wrong with you?" I'm like, "What do you mean?" He's like, "What's wrong with you?" He said, "Something's wrong." And I looked at him, I said, "I seen something." He's like, "What'd you see?" I said, "I don't know." I said, "Best way I could describe it was a monster." I said, "I know it sounds crazy." And he's like, "No." He said, "I've been out there. I've heard those screams with you. I've hunted out there with you." And so after that, I just totally changed it made me think or look outside the box, I guess you could say. Because this whole time I've been out there, I had no clue what in the world was making that noise, but never thought anything about a Bigfoot or a Sasquatch, skunk ape, whatever you want to call it. And so after that, has been nothing but research, trying to figure out what that was. It put a chip on my shoulder, actually, because I've never been scared of anything. And this thing, it scared me, but yet, I don't know if it was where I was confused or just the total shock of seeing, something that wasn't not supposed to exist. And now, after that, I need answers. So now I have no choice but to research.
Right.
I don't care if anybody believes me or not. I know what I've seen. I could care less if people believe me or not. I need answers for myself now.
And can I ask you a question real quick while we're just to this point? I've spoken with a lot of hunters, and, you've got 50% of the hunters say, well, if I'd have seen this thing, I would have put the scope on it, pulled the trigger. But I've also spoken with a lot of hunters that says that's just not what you're thinking about, because like you said, it's not supposed to be there. And it just kind of freaks you out for a minute. And a lot of people can't pull the trigger on something like that. And I've heard a lot of hunters say that, well, this thing looked too human. What if I am shooting something that's, important? What if I get in trouble? So a lot of things are running through people's heads. So, I get tired of the whole argument of like, well, if I'd have seen it, I'd have shot it, because I don't, that's people that haven't been in your situation.
Yeah, exactly. I've dealt with those people, and it's funny because the reason I didn't even think about shooting it, because I was trying to figure out what it was.
Right.
I was like, what? Because, I was brought up, raised around guns. You always know what you're shooting at. That's just basically your muscle memory and stuff. Yeah, grow up hunting, shooting, you always look, see what's in the background of it. You never pull the trigger unless you know for sure, you got your target on hand. I never thought about even pulling the trigger on that thing until I knew that I had to stop and slow down to cut across that creek. And if it was chasing me, that's when I turned around. Now then, if it was following me, running after me, I would have shot to protect myself.
Right.
But at the time of the incident, then whenever I seen it, I didn't think about shooting it. I was too focused on wondering what in the world this thing is.
Yeah.
Because, you've heard about that stuff in, books and out in the Himalayan mountains, but not northern Indiana, you know? I was like, what? What in the world is this, you know? And yeah, I love it when hunters will ask me. They'll be like, well, I've been out in the woods, I've hunted my whole life, I've never seen nothing. And I always laugh, and I'm like, let me ask you this. If it's true that you've been out in the woods your whole entire life, I said, I guarantee it, you've come across some stuff you couldn't explain. And they'll be like, well, yeah, now that I think about it. And I'm like, yeah, so your mind is set on whatever you're hunting, that Bigfoot or whatever's not real. Your mind is set on something else, so your mind don't even wander in that direction until you actually see it or encounter it.
Right.
We heard the screams, but never knew what it was, but never thought Bigfoot or a ape or whatever, you know?
No, and you and I were talking earlier about or I've heard tree knocks, and I can't imagine for the life of me what can actually make a tree knock sound. In my conventional mind, I've seen almost everything out there that where I grew up, the woods have to offer: deer, bobcat, coyote, whatever. Nothing can pick up nothing can pick up a limb or a piece of hardwood or something and sling it against a tree and make that distinct knock that sounds like, two Louisville Slugger baseball bats are hitting each other. I have no clue what's doing that.
Right. Now, see, after research I've done, I think they're actually doing that. A lot of times they're making that sound with either their mouth or their hand.
Oh, okay.
Because if you've ever tried to make a tree knock yourself, unless you go out and find a good solid stick, it's hard to do.
Right. That's right.
It is hard to do. And I've tried to figure that out. But see, okay, whenever I first had that encounter, my mind was set on, okay, because what I encountered, it acted like a wild animal. Have you ever seen that picture of the skunk ape down in Florida?
Yeah.
And that woman that took a picture of, and she turned into the police department and said that this thing was stealing oranges or apples or something from her backyard.
Yep.
That is very similar to what I've seen.
And that did have,
have that.
Yeah, that picture looks very much like an orangutan.
Yeah, and that's what this thing. It looked just like that. It was more slim around the neck and the shoulder area. That one in the picture, I don't know if it's just the way it was standing or what. Whenever they snapped a picture, it looked like it kind of had like a big hump on its shoulder, whatever. This one didn't have that. But it was very, very similar to that. And and it acted like an ape. It was shaking trees. So my first thought was, okay, this thing's going to be a primate. So after that experience, well, it was that next year I had moved down south to where I live at now, here in Virginia. I live in the Appalachian Mountains, right where Tennessee, Kentucky, all little tri-state area, Kentucky, Virginia, and Tennessee, and the Cumberland Gap area is where I live at in the Virginia side right now. And that following year I moved down here, but it had affected me so bad, I started studying wildlife conservation courses. I started doing all these college classes I could take on wildlife and tracking. And so I'm wanting to figure out, what this thing is, how to eliminate all my experiences out in the woods, know what to look for now, basic track signs. What does this to a tree? What can do that to a tree? Or what kind of hair does this animal have? Or what kind of droppings, And so I had to educate myself. I pretty much knew the woods, grew up in the woods, but I needed to know, I needed a higher level.
Sure.
That I have to try and figure this out. Now, through the years doing this, I've noticed, I think that there's more than, when you go out in the woods, it's just more than Bigfoot. There's other stuff out there. And I didn't know that at the time. But as I go through and I hear all these people say, well, that's a Bigfoot. They do this, they do that. And so I always try and break it down. I'm like, so what do you classify as a Bigfoot? You know, we put a label on anything we don't know in the woods as Bigfoot. And I know for a fact that there's some type of wild, like I said, that skunk ape type, because I've seen it. And I tried to go off that, you know, what I'd seen from the past, used for signs and stuff like that. But as the years went on, I started coming across stuff where I'd find tracks and they would just stop. You know, just weird stuff. And descriptions of these things, some people talk about them human looking. The more ape-like, like the skunk ape. Actually had, you know, where Campbell County, let's call it Tennessee.
Yeah.
You familiar with that area?
Yep.
You remember back in 2003, I don't know, well, you're over towards that area, over towards Nashville and Huntsville, but they had on the news back in 2003, and I was actually investigating. They had for like 2 to 3 weeks sightings of a skunk ape that was on the news in Campbell County, Tennessee. And they had a picture of like the patty type, and they had a picture of that skunk ape from Florida, and they asked the witnesses which one they were seeing. And they pointed right to the orangutan looking one. They're like, that right there is it. So at that point, I'm like, okay, these things are, you know, got different species. I don't know if the patty type is related to the skunk ape or just totally different, you know. And so through the years, to me, there's so many different species, different things out there that you just can't say, okay, this is Bigfoot, this is what everybody's saying, or this is what, because there's so many different types of cryptids out there now that just just people in the public, I mean, they're just so unaware. And it's really crazy because now I'm down a rabbit hole. And there's no getting out of it.
Right.
It just keeps getting deeper and deeper and deeper. But yeah, I've had 23 years experience doing this stuff. So, I mean, if there's anything you want to hit on, then go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's rare that I get to talk to someone that's, you know, has that much time invested in the research. So yeah, I'm probably going to ask you 100 questions. And, you know, you said there are so many other cryptids out there besides Bigfoot, and that brings to mind this. It's not new, but it's new to like the scene, I guess. But the whole Dogman thing, I know here lately, I've been getting tons of emails about Dogman encounters and sightings, and I couldn't wait to have you on to ask you your thoughts and opinions on this Dogman phenomenon that's just kind of taken over.
That's actually a lot of people. This past year, I've actually tried to get into doing some Dogman research. At first, I used to think it was, whenever I first started researching, I always thought it was an unidentified, it was like a Bigfoot, but it had like a snout. Have you ever heard of a devil monkey?
Uh-uh.
Okay. Now, back to the Appalachian Mountains, there was lots of occurrences with the devil monkey. And it would run on all fours, but it would stand up at very baboonish looking. And it had a snout,
okay,
like a baboon, but it had a tail. And it was in between 4 to 6 foot tall and it was very aggressive. I think in the 30s, Pittsburgh, Tennessee, the townspeople went out and they were hunting these things down. They had a big problem supposedly with these. You can see it in old newspapers and stuff. So I assumed, or I was like, okay, well, maybe that Dogman is, the skunk ape or whatever. Or not the skunk ape, but the devil monkey.
Right.
But the more and more I hear about it, and I've done some research here this past year, you'll hear some of these howls. I'm sure you've heard some of these recordings on howls.
Yeah.
Like a coyote or a wolf will have like a two-tone howl. These dogmen, I've heard three tones. I'm going to be doing some research. I have to keep you updated. Not too far from where I work at in Tennessee, along North Lake. It was 2 years ago. A friend of mine sent me a picture of a canine track, and they didn't put anything down reference size to compare the size of the track. And they're like, this track's about 8 inches long, And I'm like, I started laughing. I was like, well, that ain't no coyote track, or if it's going to be a wolf, it'd have to be a red wolf around this area. And I said, you got a werewolf there, joking around with them.
Right.
And they're like, oh, okay. Well, it's kind of wild that I had a guy that worked for me, just started working for me, probably about a month and a half ago. And right before Christmas, probably about 2 months, because it was right before Christmas when he started working for me. And he was telling me about his brother-in-law who lives in that area. And he was telling me, he's like, yeah, he's seen some type of, he said it was a werewolf, like walking on 2 legs, walking down. I'm like, where'd he live at? And it was in the same place where my friend sent me that track from. And he said that, I said, well, ask him, if there's any tracks or how soon, when was the last time he had seen it. And he said tracks were about 8 inches to 8.5. And he said that he seen it the week right before Christmas. And I was like, wow. So now I've got to go check into that. That's along North Lake over here in East Tennessee. But as far as the whole Dogman thing, these things are aggressive. I believe it's something totally different than, like I said, a Bigfoot or anything like that. I believe the government knows about it. I went to Land Between the Lakes back in November, and I'm sure you've heard of the stories in Land Between the Lakes. I'd actually went and stayed at the area where they had found the site of the bow hunter that had been killed there, supposedly.
Yeah.
And now, those areas, that's another thing, too. Those areas, like Land Between the Lakes, and you've heard that, what was it? They call it Helltown out there in Ohio.
Oh, yeah.
Where the government would just make everybody move against their will. And if you notice that those areas are hot spots for stuff like Dogmen or Bigfoot, Land Between the Lakes, big time. The Dogman, especially.
Yeah, and there was I didn't mean to cut you off, but I know you know about this. There was a reported family or a portion of a family that got attacked and killed in the LBL, the Land Between the Lakes, but maybe back in the 80s, that people think that the rangers, or at least the park service there, kind of swept it under the rug. Did you hear about that?
Oh yeah, definitely. It come back. They found the little girl up in the tree.
Yeah.
And now see, this is what caught my attention was I had to get a permit to camp out there. So I get my permit. Well, these people that we go there, I'm like, well, don't we have to, check in any park, anything like that? You camp in the Smoky Mountains. You go in there and you will check in. You'll tell them, okay, this is where I'm going to be at. And, you're going to sign in. Well, at LBL, whenever the couple people I went with, they said no, they didn't want us to sign in. I was like, what?
That's interesting.
Yeah, I was like, they're like, why do you think? They asked them, they were like, well, do you want to know where we're going to be at? And they're like, no, just go anywhere. And like, well, we're going to sign in. I said, don't sign in, just go on. And they thought that, they were like, well, I wonder why. That's kind of cool that they didn't. I said, well, that way they don't have no record of if we get killed out here. I said, there's no record, any documentation at all that we're even been here, And they're like, wow, I didn't think about that. And I was like, yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, they're not liable.
Exactly.
I'm trying to plan a trip up there. I'm only about maybe 2 hours from there, I think. And I worked a private investigation case up there a couple of weeks ago, and I was bumping the very bottom of the LBL. And I was busy. I wanted to get up into it, but I think closer to the spring, I'm going to pull together, a couple of team members that they really want to go there, and we're going to stay there a few days. And I'm really interested in getting in there and kayaking some of the smaller streams in there and just getting around the lake areas. But man, I'd love to have you if you get over this way.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I'm definitely going to do a lot more research over there. We heard some howls that night, and they got them recorded. But one was a lone coyote. That's where I like to have, my wildlife and study up on so I can cut out everything else.
Right.
But you could hear a lone coyote at first, and then you heard the other coyotes, respond. But then there was one, I couldn't really tell. It was more distinct, maybe like a 3-tone howl. And it was solo, but it was getting farther away from where we were at. That I couldn't really, get a good listener. They couldn't get a good recording on it. But it was going farther away from us. And I think they did get some of the audio on it. But so that area though, I get a real good vibe. I'm drawn to that area. And I've been warned too. A lot of people tell me now, they're like, people that get drawn to that area, good things don't happen or whatever, but I can't help it. I gotta check it out.
Well, maybe you're not invited on my trip again after all. Anytime, man, anytime you're over here, I'm ready. So, and you've always heard people say, be careful what you wish for, but somebody's got to, or I've got to find out. I've got to see something for myself. I'm tired of everybody else having these encounters and me not. And I know I told you briefly before we started recording about I've had a couple of audible encounters of things I can't explain. I was going to ask you about these sounds, and I also told you about, years ago when I went hiking ahead of some friends, and I was setting up camp, and then I was overcome with fear like crazy. And I told you I grew up out there, and I've been in the woods my entire life, and a lot of it alone. So that's what weirded me out about this. I just all of a sudden was overcome with this sense of dread and fear to where I just, I grabbed out my weapon. I sat with my back against a tree, and in about 20, 30 minutes, it passed. And I know we talked about the whole infrasound thing or just what could cause me to have that. But have you ever heard of like owls? Or you've heard mimicking, right? And I've heard owls before that didn't sound like owls. It sounded like a man trying to imitate an owl sound, or a man trying to imitate a coyote sound. And have you ever had any experiences like that?
Yeah, actually, we had one, the most recent one that I thought I've had several usually, but they'll do make a barred owl call. And we got a response back, and then we had a knock or a slap sound, but it sounded like a tree knock, what you call a tree knock. And it followed right with that response with the owl call, and it had a wood knock followed right behind it. And I'm like, okay, boom, we got something here. That's not an owl. But the people I was with, they were, I don't know, they just, it responded, that's an owl. I'm like, you don't understand, these things been known to mimic. I said, an owl's not going to make a tree knock. And we'd do it again, and other barred owls were actually coming in on us. They were, that guy that was doing the barred owl call, I mean, he can draw owls right in on us. But that one, where we didn't respond with that tree knock, it was getting farther away. And they'd do it again, and it would be farther and farther away, and then it got coyotes stirred up. The coyotes were going off because you could tell something had got into their territory. And if you've heard them yelp and stuff like that, usually when they react that way, it's because something else is in their territory, or, something's disturbed their pack. And whatever that was, it got closer towards their pack and got them all stirred up. Have you ever heard howls out in the woods?
Yeah.
And it gets coyotes from all over the place stirred up.
Yeah.
If you can, try and listen, because usually, like a Bigfoot or anything like that, it's usually a 3-tone howl. A coyote or a wolf is always usually a 2-tone. And a wolf is longer than the coyote. So if you hear that 3-tone, then you're probably not dealing with your normal, typical coyote or a wolf or red wolf. Depends on where you're at. But that right there, you have the mimicking stuff. And you're talking about the infrasound. You've heard of people getting zapped?
Yeah.
And basically, I used to think, I'm like, well, that's kind of crazy. So now everything is energy. So now I'm studying quantum physics. I never thought I'd be at this age studying quantum physics. But everything is energy. So I always try to make everything, take a scientific approach, which it's easily able to do. That, you've got elephants and I believe tigers that use infrasound. And I'd look to see, because people were getting physically sick from, supposedly, they said they got zapped. I was trying to figure out what it is, and I'd find out their symptoms, and I'd look it up. And the human body, it'll make you physically sick if you get too much infrasound.
Right.
And all of that, so whatever that was, it was sending out that infrasound. So Bigfoot or whatever this cryptid is that they encounter, I believe it's got some sort of infrasound. These things are high energy beings, very high energy. Have you ever seen any eye shine or self-illuminating eye shine?
I've seen eye shine, but not the self-illuminating.
Okay. Now, see, the self-illuminating, I've got lots of reports of people saying it's self-illuminating. Well, if it's self-illuminating, that means it's very high energy, because it's producing energy from within to make it shine, not like your typical reflective eye shine off of a deer or whatever. So if you see self-illuminating, you know this is a very high energy being. And that's why, like I said, the rabbit hole has got me farther and farther in there. I've experienced so much crazy stuff, just everyday people's minds couldn't comprehend or wrap around some of this stuff that I've actually seen and experienced. But everything is energy, and it all starts from there, and I believe it's all wrapped together. The Bigfoot, the UFOs, aliens. That's why I work with Angelia. We, do the cross-reference stuff. I'm sure you've heard of Stan Gordon, his work.
Oh, yeah.
With the UFO and the Bigfoot. But I believe there's so many different types that you're not just dealing with, I've heard the Nephilim theory.
Right.
The one that I physically seen up there in Indiana, that was more animal than anything. It was more animal-like. It acted like an animal. It left hair, had a smell. It was like a normal, typical animal. But these other types that we're seeing, I don't know if they're a hybrid or if they're something totally different.
Yeah, and I know you've heard about Skinwalker Ranch and what they have going on out there. It's like everything from the large hybrid or the large wolves, the bipedal Bigfoot, the portals, the orbs, the UFOs. I mean, that's documented by actual scientists out there that's been on the property for years now, and they haven't released a lot yet, but I tend to agree with you. I think a lot of it's connected, and especially, like you said, talking with Angelia, she's really opened my eyes to she's connected a lot of the dots and some of the questions I've had, because you're right, this is nothing but a big rabbit hole, and it's like the deeper you go in, the more it opens up. And I know you've noticed probably the deeper or the more you look for it, the more it tends to look back. So I know we have to be somewhat careful to what we're seeking out,
And the government covers it all up. And people are like, how come you don't see these pictures? Any good type of evidence is going to be covered up. It will not be shown unless they say it's okay, unless they allow it. And I've dealt with them firsthand. Like I was talking about earlier about the skunk ape or there in La Follette, Tennessee. I was in there nosing around. Started, asking questions. This woman told me that they had went in and killed it. She said the sheriff from La Follette went in there, La Follette, Tennessee, and he had some guys that looked like SWAT. They said they were, I believe, BFRO members is what they told her or something like that. And they went in there, and she said that they killed it. I had some guys that lived in that area that worked for me, and they were talking about helicopters in there all week, all kinds of crazy stuff. And then after I'm in there nosing around, asking questions, investigating, I start getting weird phone calls asking me stuff like, oh, we're doing a TV show. What do you know about this? Specific questions.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
You know,
and so I'm...
You know what? I have gotten some... you're freaking me out a little bit, because I have, past year, I've gotten some of those calls from either producers or... like you said, like the TV show stuff, just trying to figure out kind of what I've discovered in research. And, nothing's ever come of it. So that's kind of odd you say that.
Yeah, it's, they're definitely watching me. It's okay. And I've been, like I tell you, I've been doing this research. I've been out with groups that have been funded. I've had to sign affidavits, talking about, I can't talk about where we've been, what we're doing. It's, top secret pretty much stuff. I had a couple of them because I've spoken at the some of these Bigfoot conferences, and I've had people that I thought were fans that come up and they start talking to me, and then they'd say, "Hey, I'm going to get a hold of you if you'd like to. We'd like for you to come out and help us track this and that and so forth." And but then they're like, "Okay, I've been to areas where you can't even allowed to have your cell phone on. You come in, they're like, shit, somebody's got a cell phone on. Can't shut the phone off, can't take pictures, can't do nothing. I'm signing 6 pages of alpha data, talking about we can't, what we're looking for." So, I mean, I know they know how much of it they know. I'm not real sure.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
I'm definitely down the rabbit hole.
Yeah.
Definitely down the rabbit hole.
Well,
Have you, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No. Go ahead.
I was going to say, have you, you seen ever had stuff like your cell phone or any type of equipment that you've had just power down and crazy stuff like that?
Yeah. Yeah. And usually it's been like some of my, like the camcorders that I carry out. And like, it's like some of the, it seems to be like some of the weaker batteries are like they're in my infrared or my thermal cameras. A lot of that stuff tends to just kind of drain after I know I've either charged it all night or I've replaced, or, I try to put fresh batteries in every time before I go out. And not so much for my phone, but yeah, other equipment, I sure have had it drain.
See, that's where the whole, I think with the Bigfoot, whatever these things are, high energy beings. That's why, have you heard the people talk about how Bigfoot was seeing down the power lines through the woods?
Yeah. Yeah.
Everybody always thought, well, that's because it's big open area. To me, I think it's because they're drawing energy off those power lines.
Yeah, it could be.
Because if they got self-illuminating eye shine, and if these things, like said, are crossing, you've heard the portal theory, stuff like that, takes a lot of energy to open a portal. And we know that the government's been trying to do it for a long time. They've actually been experimenting with it down here in Oak Ridge at the nuclear plant.
Yes. Dude, you're exactly right. And that's another whole topic.
Yep.
But yeah, you're right.
It's kind of cool. I got a scientist phone number that I'm going to be in contact with here soon and see if I can get some information, because she's the one actually trying to open the parallel universe or portal to one or whatever you want to call it. I'm hoping to get some info. I doubt that she'll give me hardly anything, but
well, even
maybe I can.
I mean, you've been studying quantum physics. You know that most of your major scientists have, at least on paper, have proven that there are other dimensions, or at least other parallel universes. They've, even Einstein was on board with this. Nikola Tesla. Some of your older scientists were adamant that mathematically this is possible. So, but yeah, we'll have to talk about Oak Ridge some other time, but definitely that. And I'm sure you've heard of CERN, the what's going on over there with their big, Large Hadron Collider. They're doing some crazy stuff there, and people can't stop watching, the politics, the Fox, the versus CNN versus, everything else. Everything's going on. They're keeping it's like we're being focused just on certain issues that we've always been focused on. And if you don't just look past that a little bit or open your eyes to something else, open your mind to a little bit more that's just us, you're going to miss a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, it's such a big picture. People don't realize that. It's like I said, I started out trying to hunt down this, thought it'd be like a wood ape or a North American ape, to where my power, stuff like that on my equipment's powering down. I'm getting crazy pictures on my trail cameras. A fog will come through and it'll set my camera off and mess it up, and the fog leaves and it's fine. I mean, I've got tons of stories of stuff just from all the experience I've had, but it's all tied together in some way or form.
Yeah, and that's what the majority of researchers now are finding out. And this, it's funny you say that, because almost every researcher I talk to anymore is talking about the connections between all of this stuff. So it's
like the ley lines. Okay, the Earth's grid. You got the ley lines, the energy,
right,
and you've got your major, the pyramids, Stonehenge, they are over the intersections of these energy ley lines.
Yep.
And, you know, some people think, what is your theory? What do you think Bigfoot is?
Oh,
I'm going to turn around and ask you a question here.
Let me tell you, I'm like you. I used to think that it was, and well, I mean, for a while I was on the fence. I'm like, what are these people seeing? And I went to, well, maybe they're not seeing anything. You know, my law enforcement background kicks in. It's like, I've got to have proof. I can't take this to a court of law without proof, you know? So for years I was thinking, is this even real? Then for years I was thinking, maybe this is just flesh and blood. But like you said, after digging in deeper, and a lot of the, you know, step A, B, C, and D leads me to think that a lot of this stuff is connected. And I think, honestly, I'm almost leaning toward some of the Nephilim theory, and I know that's going to like weird some people out. But no, I'm thinking a lot of it's connected.
See, I believe there's a flesh and blood kind, like the types that I had seen. The
Right.
people over here in the Follett, Tennessee were seeing. People down in Florida, that skunk ape, it's got that smell.
Yeah.
I physically have seen it, so I know that thing is real. I've physically seen it, so I know that's real. And it hair, tracks, it acts like an animal. So I believe that type is definitely some sort of flesh and blood ape. But then you got the other Bigfoot, that, you know, the human looking face, just the whole more kind of like the human, the giants, you know, the whole Nephilim thing. I believe it's two totally different things, but everybody wants to call it all Bigfoot.
Right. Yeah, I can see that.
But I think it's people always just want to throw it in there if it's Bigfoot. If it's a big giant out in the woods, it's got to be Bigfoot. But what would you classify Bigfoot as? You know, different people have different theories. So, but from the research I've done and I've experienced, I think they're totally two different species of different animals and different things out there.
Yeah.
Because if you heard stuff looking like the predator being cloaked and, you know, going after animals, it looks like the light has been around it. They said they can see through this thing, but it's kind of like a blurry, you know, you've seen the movie Predator, you know how you could see that thing moving through the trees and stuff.
Yeah.
I've had a lot of reports of that, and everybody always says a Bigfoot, you know. I don't believe that is what you would classify as a Bigfoot. I think that's more alien or something else, you know, that is totally different than the whole Bigfoot theory.
Right. And speaking of that, have you heard of like a cloaking theory as far as their actual hair is some certain type of oils or certain type of their hair can like flex or move or bend that will actually like refract light and make things kind of blend in. It's not well,
Yes,
it's not necessarily like high tech. It's almost like some kind of primal mechanism that they've evolved with. I mean, it's just, I don't know if I believe in that. It's just something I've heard recently about the oils in their hair that makes certain lights do different things.
I've heard of that. And me and Angelia was actually talking about that not too long ago, talking about how our mind, because we try and break it down also with what we actually see, what we visualize. What I see may not be what you see.
Yeah.
But we've grown up, we've been taught that's, for example, I'm partially colorblind. And if I'm looking at whatever this color is green, in my eyes, it might be green. Whatever color that is to me has always been green. And you see that same color, but it might look different to you, but you know that is green also. So
right. Yeah,
we were trying to figure out, you got the whole, with the oils and the way your mind we'll take that information in, and yeah, with the whole bending of light and stuff, I've actually got some pictures on my trail camera. I've had a lot of weird stuff going on this one area, and had that fog that was going through, and it was setting my camera off. There'd be nothing there, but it's messing up my camera. This fog was going through like a mist, and it was messing up my camera. Take pictures of deer and everything else just fine. But whenever that fog goes through, it would mess it up. And I was out in that area one time, and I heard two thumps on the ground really loud, and something went barreling through the woods when I went to get that SD card out of that camera. And my thermal powered down, and the flashlight went dead. I was like, wow, that's kind of weird. So I walk up, I get my card out, flashlight starts working again, thermal powers right back up.
Wow.
And I look in 76% battery. So I go back to where I heard that thing running. It was unpowered down again. Now, after hearing, we was talking about that light and looking like the Predator thing, I don't know if it could be just water that's on my camera, but I've got some pictures that look like the Predator type thing is in my picture, but it could be moisture over, run across the camera or whatever, but like 20 minutes later, these turkey come through and the picture's fine.
Yeah. And it, that's kind of what I've recently had, some people send me pictures, and they made up they gave me a very good point. Like, I'm taking pictures of something I see moving, or I see this out here, and when I take a picture of it, you're not going to see it because it's either pixelated or it's camouflaged or whatever. But they're getting a lot of haters coming out. It's like, this is nothing, And these persons showing me pictures of Bigfoot or Dogman or cryptids or whatever, but we post the pictures, and everybody comes out and saying, this is crazy. I don't see anything. But, that doesn't mean it's not there. You're just taking a picture of what you're seeing at the time. And, I wish people would be a little kinder to, everyone that's submitting these pictures, because, you're not going to, you got to have the whole experience at the time. That photograph is not going to convince you of anything.
Right. Now, what I've experienced also is I've been out with a lot of people. Okay, you're not going to have Bigfoot encounters every time you're out. You're not going to have, most of the time, you're not going to have nothing. But I've been out with some people that everything is Bigfoot.
Yeah.
They're like, there's eye shine, there's this, and I'll look at it, and it'll be a firefly. It'll be, a lightning bug or whatever. And it's kind of funny because everything to them, I always try to prove everything, I want to break it down before I say, okay, this is definitely Bigfoot. But you got all these people that'll take pictures, and they can take anything out of the tree lines. I know it's the pictures you're talking about. I see them all the time. They get sent to me quite a bit too. But a lot of it's just shadow stuff like that. But that's where they get that mindset that everything is got to be Bigfoot. It's got to be this or that. And then they start seeing stuff that's not really there. It's a psychological.
Right.
So, but some of those pictures, though, yeah, it's hard because you can take a picture of deer in the woods and it's hard to see them,
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'll have to, if you remind me, I'll send you one. I mean, like I said, it's probably just water, but it's kind of odd that less than 20 minutes, because there's some turkey on the camera in the pictures, and then 20 minutes later, the picture's clear when you see these other turkey come through.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. I mean, it could have dried. It could have been a water just run down it, but I never really thought to look up. When I first seen it, I thought, okay, there's water on the thing. But then I started listening to some of these cloaking and all this stuff look like a predator, and that's what this thing kind of reminds you of on the camera.
Yeah,
I'll send you a picture of it.
Yeah, send me one, and I'll send you a couple back that I've recently received from people, and see what you think about it. And you're talking about the fog earlier, and there's a lot of stuff dealing with fog. Like, I know you've heard of the missing 411 cases, or people will see a fog, or they'll see fog on cameras, a weird fog rolling in on. Just in general, when there's like some high strangeness going on. And I got to looking into some of that, and there's something called, it's like either radio propagation or like ionospheric reflection sort of thing, where, and it's electric or electrostatically charged. And it's like an ionospheric wave of electronic particles, and I was thinking, like, what if that's something that moves in and out of these things with the energy that comes into, it can totally disrupt everything we have electronically, causing the drainage, or, and I know this may sound crazy to a lot of people, but what if this is how these things manifest, and they have to use the electronic, the air, the statically charged air that's around them. This is what they pull from, and this is why sometimes the cameras wig out and you see fog and stuff. So that's just something. I didn't know if you've ever heard of that, or is that's just my weird mind thinking stuff up?
Yeah. No, it ain't. Definitely ain't weird. Actually, this past summer, if you were familiar with Smoky Mountains, up towards Klingman's Dome, it was late at night, and it was me, Angelia, and Travis Walton from Fire in the Sky.
Oh yeah.
Okay, it was me, Travis, and Angelia. We went up to the top up there towards Klingman's Dome. It was nighttime, and this fog is in, and it looks like there's lights in this fog. It's kind of weird. Angelia's like, "Is that lights in there?" I'm like, "Well, is it the stars?" And I got looking, and you can see the stars above the fog. But inside that fog, I don't know. It looked like little lights in the fog, and kind of got a little creepy. I was sitting there, and I'm like, okay, Travis is here, and he might be attracting something.
Yeah, so, just kick him out of the truck and keep going.
Yeah, but see, we were out of the vehicle. We was out there walking around there in the mountains there and looking around, and that fog was coming through, and Angelia was like, okay, that's enough of this.
Right.
I was looking, and I was like, man, Travis may have brought something in here on us.
Right.
I talked to actually David Pillards from 411, and it was shortly thereafter. I think I was talking to him back in September. I'd seen him. I told him about it, and he was telling me about a couple missing person cases up there around Klingman's Dome in the Smokies. He's like, you do know that? I'm like, yeah, I've heard of the people, going missing up there. But yeah, I know exactly that right there you're talking about with that manifesting in that fog, the particles. First thing I thought of whenever
oh yeah,
you said that was that time that we were up there a couple months. Well, I guess it's back during the summer, August, I believe.
It's
and
you may agree or may not, but I mean, you think about, we get called crazy, or not crazy. That's probably a harsh word, but we get called, outside thinkers or free spirits or out of, fringe topics, whatever. But, and this is just me personally. I mean, I grew up Christian home in church all the time. And, I people keep saying, why are you thinking this way? Or why do you talk about these such a fringe topics and all this kind of stuff? But, if they were to go through the Bible and, if they knew the Bible and knew how, all the stories, I mean, there are some fantastic stories that just defy all kind of explanation. So I'm thinking, how can you ridicule me for this stuff that, or for the things that people are seeing out there and experiencing? Yet if you look to the Bible, that whole book is full of hundreds of years of fantastical accounts. It's just, I don't know. That's just my way of thinking. And I know I don't know where I was going with that, but I did want to. I know time's running short, and I don't want to keep you all day, man. But can you tell me a little bit about MECRO and how you started that and what you guys have going on, and then I'll let you get out of here.
All right. Well, Mountain Empire Cryptid Research Organization, also known as MECRO. We're over here in the mountains, so it's the Mountain Empire area is what they call us. They got college, Mountain Empire Community College. They've got different stuff. Well, I had actually was always solo, mostly on my investigations and work and stuff. Well, had a couple guys that had got together and they had started MECRO, and I was one of the main members, and researching with them. Well, they basically they fell out. They didn't want any more to do with it or didn't have time to fool with it. And so I just basically kept it I get, share stuff like that. Helps get a lot of reports and sightings in for me to help me research. But basically any type of cryptid, any type of strange stuff, a lot of people can reach me through that site on Facebook. I'm going to be coming up with a website for it. That way, maybe can make different maps and stuff of sightings, and definitely going to try and expand it. But before, I've never wanted to prove it that this exists or this exists to anybody else, because, like you said, people call you crazy, and I laugh now that whenever people tell me that stuff's not real, I'm like, start laughing at them basically, because they obviously don't have a clue what's really going on out there. But
right,
I would, like I said, if I could make a wall full of cast tracks of all the ones I've come across through the year, but I've never wanted to prove it to anybody. I didn't care about tracks. I want to track this thing down, look these things in the eye. I want to know what this stuff is. I need answers. Didn't care about proving it to anybody else. I just need to know for myself. So, but whenever I went with MECRO and everybody else dropped out, and so I'm the only one running it now, I teamed up with Angelia, where she runs her parish here. And of course, she's MUFON also. And we do the crossover. So she posts stuff in there, different stuff that different stories, different stuff that we come across. But what I noticed was that's how I can usually tell, since I've experienced actually seeing one of these things with my own eyes and a traumatizing experience, I can normally tell if a witness has seen something. So MECRO is a good way for people to contact me, let me know what they've seen, what they've done without ridicule. And just to see these people, the relief off their face, when they talk to me about it.
Right.
It's just a great outlet, because, the government or anybody, they will make a mockery of it to keep it quiet. And, I've had great witnesses, come forward and say, hey, I've seen this or that, and you can tell a relief. And I enjoy seeing these people, actually, because I know what it's like when you experience something like that they can actually vent or, tell their testimony about what they've encountered without being ridiculed, or they've got a place to go. So, yeah, the whole Mountain Empire is just research. It's a Facebook page, going to be a website. Probably try and do a different sighting map, stuff like that, and a place for people to, just come up with reports and stuff. But I've been running that solo for probably about the past 2.5 years now. But this past year, I've done so much field work. I've been from Gosh, I've been all over the United States. It seems like out in the woods camping, and when I go on boots on the ground, I've actually got a couple people now that are going to help with keeping up with that stuff since I'm out in the field a lot. But it's going to be getting bigger. It's going to be, more reports, different stuff on there. I can't put all my stuff on there, but I'll put a little bit, but I can't put all of it on there.
Well,
I wish I could tell a lot of stuff that I've seen, but I'm not able to.
Oh yeah, I bet. And I will definitely add a link to your Facebook page on my pages and stuff, and send people your way. And if you have any, if you run into anyone that wants to tell their story on here, because like you said, it's cathartic. It's it helps people to tell their story to someone who won't, whether they just want to be heard and they don't want to be ridiculed or judged. And that's kind of the whole reason I started this podcast, which is kind of grown bigger than I thought it would. And even to the YouTube channel, I just wanted to give people a platform to feel safe. And it's kind of helped them. I've had a lot of emails saying, thank you for listening. And that's, I'm not an expert in any of this stuff. I just like to research. I like to listen. And I'm like you. I kind of like to put my boots on the ground too. I've been doing this a while under the radar, but myself and other, police officers back home, we have to do it kind of quiet because, what they would think of their officers in that town if they knew they were hunting this fringe topic stuff. So, but I mean, no, anytime you need something, and especially if you get over to Nashville, man, look me up. And if you,
definitely,
I'm definitely, oh, definitely. I think we're going to run into each other soon. And I want to go to LBL. I want to spend a few days there. And actually, I can tell you more about this off air, but I'm planning a trip up to, and you may know where this is, but up Kentucky, West Virginia line, kind of the Kelly Mountain Road area. And there's a lot of stuff going on up there. And even in the areas you're in, it's just like a hot spot. And I want to get over to the Smoky Mountains because I know there's a lot going on over there. So, but man, I'm going to, like I said, I'm going to put you out there, and I really appreciate you taking time to come on and talk to me about all this.
Oh yeah. Like I said, I could go on for hours. I've got all kinds of story stuff, but.
Well, good. That means there's going to be it'll be a part 2 to this, I hope, and part 3. And I mean,
there you go.
I'm glad we could finally connect.
Yeah, definitely. I'm glad Angelia introduced us.
Yeah, I love her. She's such a wealth of knowledge and information in the UFO field and in all of this stuff with PairShare research. So her and Dale, all those guys are great, and I'm glad I got connected with them probably maybe a year and a half, 2 years ago. Been to a few MUFON meetings. I even got to meet Travis Walton one night at their house when they had a little get together and discussion about some of the abduction or the experience or things going on. Travis is a great guy, very down to earth. Yeah. And man, thank you so much, Matt. And I can't wait to talk to you. Me. Oh man, anytime. You've got my number now, so anytime you want to call and talk, or if you got something going on over here you need me to check out, or vice versa, I'll definitely keep you in mind.
Yeah, definitely. We'll do some boots on the ground research here soon then.
I love it. Well, all right. Thank you, Matt. And man, have a great weekend, and we will talk soon.
All right. Thank you. You too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
And that's a wrap on another fun episode of Mysterious Huntsman Podcast. A big thanks, shout out to Matt Delph with MECRO, the Mountain Empire Cryptid Research Organization. And you can find him on Facebook. And if you need to get in touch with him, just reach out to him on Facebook, and I'll try and send an email link on my sites as well as this YouTube channel. And remember, guys, if you'd like to be a guest on the show, or if you just want to reach out to me about any kind of issues you have that I can spread along to PairShare Research here in Nashville with Angelia Shear, or back to Matt Delph over with MECRO, just reach out to me, mysteriousHuntsman@gmail.com. And you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, my website, mysterioushuntsman.com, and especially YouTube right now. Just go there and subscribe to it. Share with your friends. And thanks, guys. Have a great week, and we will talk to you soon.